Hello, my name is Veronica, and this is my Girl Scout Gold Award on We Are Responsible. As the Lorax once said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Let's all join the green side to raise our voice and not the sea level, and to remember that there is no planet B. Climate change is real. Many people think that Earth is open space, but we are actually in our own biosphere. The atmosphere acts like a bottle cap, keeping the oxygen and everything else in, and keeping the harshness, or a great deal of harshness, of outer space out. We have to act now before it is too late. 97% of scientists around the world agree that climate change exists. Greenhouse gases are the major cause, and humans are responsible. We need to act now, and one way is to consider and to put into action energy alternatives for our homes, schools, communities, transportation, etc. I've previously watched a video called Global Dimming by BBC for a college class, but it has been removed. However, the transcript is still available if you would like to look it up on their website, and it is worth reviewing. It demonstrates scientists around the world proving that climate change exists and that it is caused by humans. I also wanted to state beforehand that all of my pros and cons for each of the alternative energy resources came off of a website called Vattenfall. They had a very concise, neat, and simple table that clearly listed all the pros and cons for each energy source. The first energy alternative that I will talk about is solar power. The pros of this energy alternative are, due to decreasing costs, high public support, and low CO2 emissions, volumes of solar photovoltaic will continue to grow. Also, when it is combined with energy storage and smart software solutions, solar energy becomes a reliable and ever cheaper source of energy. The sun is also an unlimited resource in contrast to fossil fuels. It is easy to install, no rotating masses, little operation and maintenance work, and it has a long lifetime of systems that is about 25 years. The cons of this energy alternative are solar energy is intermittent, which means that electricity production is dependent on sunlight. It's expensive, but in recent years the cost of solar energy equipment has decreased significantly. Sunlight is varying with location and season. Forecasts are more unsecure than for fossil fuels, but better than wind. And it's not dispatchable and mismatched between generation and demand curve. In Carlsbad, California, there is a water desalination plant that converts unusable ocean water into both drinkable water and electricity. If you go to their website, it says that they produce 50 million gallons a day and that the Pacific is now on top, as in the Pacific Ocean. They found a way in which they could make the ocean water drinkable, as well as be able to produce energy. They also state that the ratio is 2 gallons of seawater to 1 gallon of drinking water, and then 1 gallon of water that has twice the amount of salt. They dilute the water that is concentrated with the salt before it goes back into the ocean while following the environmental regulations. The water desalination plant was also built on an industrial site that was previously standing, so much of the factory has been recycled and moved around to fit the needs for the desalination plant. They also explain on their website the process of desalination, which is desalination, often thought to refer only to the removal of salt from seawater, actually removes virtually any mineral and most biological or organic chemical compounds to produce high-quality water suitable for drinking. They also state that the Carlsbad desalination plant has significant economic benefit for the region, including $50 million in annual spending and 500 new indirect jobs throughout the region. It also stated on their website that this Carlsbad desalination project will be the first major California infrastructure project to people all around the globe that rely on desalinated water for their daily water needs. A multitude of items also can be solar powered. You can put solar panels onto your home. Also, solar panels enable you to have a power station at which you can. When I went to tour UC San Diego, they had pots with plants in them, and they also had these solar panels, and it enabled you to have this power station in which you could charge your phone at, which they stated on the pots. UC San Diego also had solar panels that are up in their environmental college area, which run on they're shaped as flowers, so they're up there and then they're shaped as a big flower. And I think that was really cool because it enables the area to use the solar power as well as giving an artistic aura. There are also chargers for your phone that you can buy that are solar powered, and you just clip it onto your bag and let it soak in the rays, and then you're able to charge your phone. The next alternative energy source that I will talk about is wind power. The pros for this alternative energy source are wind power emits essentially no CO2 across its life cycle, and it has no fuel costs. The cons for this alternative energy source are it has an impact on the landscape and also emits noise, it's dependent on available wind, and it has a significant investment cost. Windmills are a big factor in this alternative energy source. The Netherlands are well known for windmills. There are a lot of people that travel to the Netherlands just to go windmill watching. The Netherlands also has a National Mill Day where they open hundreds of windmills and watermills across the country for people to visit. I actually live next to the biggest collection of wind turbines in the world. In 2012, it conducted 5% of California's power, and they plan to up it to 33% of the state's power by 2020. There are over 4,000 turbines in the collection that I live next to. The only problem with them is that some of them are getting old because they were built in 1980, and so that makes them 3 decades older than the new ones, which are designed to lessen the amount of bird deaths because the birds are flying into them, since the area is also a really big spot for migration of birds. Scotland, the ones in 1980, they also don't produce as much wind as the new ones because they're smaller. They're about 80 feet compared to the new ones, which are approximately 430 feet tall, and they are also a greater threat to wildfires. Scotland also has something called the floating turbines that are in the ocean. They harness the harsher winds that are off the coast. These floating turbines also enable us to harvest the wind energy that can be found above deeper waters. I was researching online and it said that up to 80% of the offshore wind resources can be found in deep waters. The next alternative energy source that I'll talk about is biomass. The pros for this alternative energy source are biomass resources are geographically diversified and political risk is limited, and by using biomass in power production instead of fossil fuels, CO2 emissions are significantly reduced. Also, properly managed biomass is carbon neutral over time. The cons for this alternative energy source are supply of larger volumes is currently difficult to secure, and biomass is currently more expensive than using energy sources such as coal, gas, or nuclear power. Biomass is an organic material made from animals and plants such as woods, crops, garbage, alcohol fuels, and landfill gas. It contains stored energy from the sun. It is a renewable energy because we will always be able to grow more trees and crops, and there will always be waste from these items. Some common examples of biomass fuels are wood, manure, crops, and some types of garbage. I researched biomass up a bit and came across a website called EIA Energy Kids that had a PDF on biomass. They stated that wood waste or garbage can be burned to produce steam for making electricity or to provide heat to industries and homes. Biomass can also be converted into other forms of energy such as methane gas or transportation fuels such as ethanol and biodiesel. They also state that biomass fuels provide about 4% currently of the energy used in the U.S., and that researchers are trying to find more ways to burn more biomass and less fossil fuels. They also state that landfills can be a source of energy since organic waste produces methane as it decomposes. Biomass pollutes the air when it's burned, but it does not pollute the air as much as fossil fuels do. Biomass fuels do not produce pollutants such as sulfur, which can cause acid rain. And when burned, biomass releases CO2, which is a greenhouse gas. My dad also once told me one of his friends had converted his truck so that it ran on vegetable oil that was previously used by restaurants. He would go to the restaurants that he would make a deal with the restaurants and ask them for their used vegetable oil, And they would agree because it would lower their amount of waste. And then with a little bit of diesel to keep the truck running and vegetable oil to fill it up, he successfully converted it from harsh fossil fuels to biomass. The next alternative energy source that I'll talk about is hydropower. According to originenergy.com, hydropower is a form of renewable energy that uses water stored in dams, as well as flowing in rivers to create electricity in hydropower plants. It uses a turbine to help generate electricity using the energy of falling or flowing water to turn the blades. The pros for this alternative energy source are hydropower has almost no emissions that impact the climate or the environment. It provides large-scale and stable electricity generation. It functions as balancing power, has no fuel cost, and hydropower plants have a long economic life. The cons for this alternative energy source are hydropower plants are a significant encroachment on the landscape and impact river ecosystems because they alternate them, and they also stop the natural flow of the rivers at sometimes, and constructing a new hydropower plant requires a substantial investment. A lot of Spokane, Washington's energy comes from hydroelectric power connected to the Spokane River. This dam is instrumental in preventing electric power for Spokane streets, businesses, etc. This dam does not only produce electricity for Spokane, but it also produces electricity as far as Burke, Idaho. The hydroelectric dam is ran by Spokane's water department, and as the Spokane City's website states, it operates in a run-off-the-river mode, which means there is little or no water storage provided by the dam, which also means it is subject to seasonal river flows. They also state that the dam generates more than 70 million kilowatts of electricity annually, as well as up to 180 million gallons of clean, safe drinking water per day to more than 210,000 that live in Spokane. This dam pushes water out to serve over 70,000 water services and makes enough water to power for the annual needs for 4,405 average households, as well as enough power to run one 60-watt light bulb for 140,625 years. Niagara Falls is one of the world's largest sources of hydroelectric power. When I looked on their website, it told me that the falls is providing the driving force for almost 2 million kilowatts of electricity from a number of power plants on the Canadian side. On the American side, it generates 2.4 million kilowatts of energy, which is enough to power 24 million 100-watt light bulbs. The first hydroelectric power plant was built along the Niagara Falls by Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, and it is now a registered National Landmark historical site that can be visited. The next alternative energy source that I will talk about is nuclear power. Nuclear power is the energy that is released by splitting the atoms of certain elements. When I researched more into this renewable energy source, World Nuclear's website stated that in a nuclear power reactor, the energy released is used as heat to make steam to generate electricity. The pros for this alternative energy source are nuclear power emits lower levels of CO2 across its life cycle, it provides stable and large-scale electricity generation, and the cost for fuel, operation, and maintenance are normally relatively low. The cons for this alternative energy source are the management of high-level waste requires storage in secure facilities for a very long time, and construction of a new nuclear power plant requires major investments. World Nuclear's website also states that nuclear energy now provides about 11% of the world's electricity from about 450 power reactors. 16 countries depend on nuclear power for at least 1/4 of their electricity. R.E.S.P.O.N.S.I.B.L.E website is another that I looked at for additional information on nuclear energy. They state that nuclear energy is used to produce electricity in a more economical and sustainable way as long as it is put to good use. They also state that atomic energy contributes to increasing food resources through fertilizers and genetic modifications in food. The control of pests from radiation with nuclear energy also allows better conservation of food. They also state that nuclear reactors produce heat, which can be used for desalination of water, which is especially useful for those countries that are dry and lack potable water resources. Nuclear power plants produce clean energy and can be built in rural or urban areas without having a major environmental impact. However, as we have seen with previous incidents such as Fukushima, lack of control or an accident can have catastrophic consequences for large hectares of territory and for the population of generations and years. They also state that nuclear power emits less gases into the atmosphere, avoiding a greenhouse effect. The last alternative energy source that I'll talk about is coal. Though this is an alternative energy source, it is one of the worst that we can use. It is dangerous for those who mine it. It also pollutes the air and the water. The World Coal Association defines coal as a fossil fuel and the altered remains of prehistoric vegetation that had originally accumulated in swamps and peat bogs. The energy that we obtain from coal nowadays is energy that plants absorbed from the sun millions of years ago. They also state that the quality of each coal deposit is determined by the types of vegetation from which the coal originated, the depths of burial, the temperatures and pressures at those depths, and the length of the time the coal has been forming in the deposit. The pros for this alternative energy source are: coal provides stable and large-scale electricity generation, coal power has a competitive production cost, and fuel costs are low and coal markets are well functioning. The cons for this alternative energy source are: coal power plants emit high levels of carbon dioxide, technologies to reduce coal power plant carbon dioxide emissions are expensive, and coal mining impacts significantly on the landscape and the infrastructure. West Virginia is a major producer of coal, and it is also one of the primary economic resources. This coal that they mine provides over half of the nation's energy, but is now declining to about 1/3 of the nation's energy, as cheap natural gas is being used more and more. With the decline in the demand for coal, many have lost their jobs. The state is planning to combat this by putting about 850 giant wind turbines for a power plant being planned, and having the laid-off coal workers run the turbines. Also, if you stay up on current news, you would know that recently President Trump has claimed that West Virginia is sending clean coal to China. According to the Washington Post, Trump has pegged the state, which is West Virginia's, economic growth to increase exports of clean coal to China. They also state that the term clean coal refers to coal used for energy production. This is a confusion of concepts because when the coal is burned to generate electricity, it releases, as the Washington Post states, a slew of noxious chemicals into the air, including sulfur dioxide, mercury, and other heavy metals. Burning coal also releases carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. The clean part of coal refers to electricity-generated plants that scrub sulfur dioxide from smokestacks and bury carbon dioxide emissions underground. The coal burned is not cleaner, but the plant uses technology to reduce the effects of burning the fossil fuel. That is all for the video for alternative energy resources. Just if you have more questions, try researching things on your own and know that there's always ways that you can use more energy efficient energy sources. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.